Hi, everybody. I think we can get started. Thank you all for joining today. Just to note, firstly, that we will be recording the webinar today and be sending around a link of the recording to anyone who has registered to join the webinar. Thank you for signing up to listen to me talk about publishing with protocols.io. I really appreciate people joining today, especially during these challenging times, and I hope that everyone is keeping well. Okay, so in the webinar today, I'm going to cover the benefits of linking to protocols.io from your research article. Before I jump into that though, let me quickly introduce myself. Emma Ganley, I'm Director of Strategic Initiatives at protocols.io. I've only been working at protocols.io for a few months, and I started out in academia with a PhD and postdoc in biological sciences. And I'm now a reformed journal editor after nearly 15 years working as an editor. Most recently, I was chief editor at PLOS Biology. However, despite not being physically at protocols.io for very long, I've been working with them for some time. In 2017, while I was at PLOS Biology, I worked with the protocols.io team as we rolled out a partnership where we encouraged all authors at PLOS journals to submit their protocols to protocols.io and include the link in their materials and methods so that the resulting papers would be more reproducible. So as you can tell, this is a topic that I've been thinking about for some time now. After that longish intro, here's a brief overview of what I will cover in the next 15 minutes or so. I'm going to first give a quick introduction to protocols.io. I will talk a little bit about the existing relationships that we have at protocols.io with publishers, journals, and funders and institutions. I'm going to run through some examples of exactly what I mean by linking to protocols.io from research articles, along with the inverse direction, how you link back from your protocol to the research article. We should have time for some questions. If you have questions, you can either save them until the end or feel free to type them into the Q&A chat box or chat windows at any time, and we'll do our best to answer them. Some may be answered during the session or some we'll get to at the end. There's someone else from protocols.io. Anita is helping behind the scenes, so she'll be helping me field those questions. And if we don't get to them, we'll try and discuss them at the end or can follow up with people separately afterwards. Anyway, let's move on. By way of introduction to one of the main underlying reasons for the existence of protocols.io, I'm going to introduce you first to Rocky the lab raccoon. It's a pretty sad and sorry tale that when he joined a new lab, he was asked to repeat several of the protocols that someone else had developed before him. But try as he might, he could not get them to work. He had the previous postdoc's notebook, but there was nowhere near enough detailed information in there about how to run the experiments for him to repeat them. Unfortunately, Rocky's sorry situation is all too common and happens very frequently. Many researchers will have encountered the same frustration when trying to repeat an experiment. The limited information that you can normally read in a published articles, materials, and methods section is often not enough for the experiment to be repeated. Even worse than this, often an article will simply cite an earlier paper, which may also cite another earlier paper, and you can end up on a complete wild goose chase that never results in you getting the information that you need. This lack of detailed protocol method information is a major contributing factor to some of the bad press that various research fields have received in general in recent years. Here's just a few headlines I've got on this slide. There have been many allusions to crises and breakdowns. Really, most of this is actually just about poor record keeping and reporting. In fact, it was after a personal experience during his postdoc of spending many months trying to get a protocol to work that protocols.io's CEO, Lenny Teitelman, along with the other co-founders, Irina and Alexei, founded and launched protocols.io. For anyone who doesn't know what protocols.io is, it's an online collaborative platform designed to capture all of the details and nuance of step-by-step research protocols. It's a tool for collaborative method development and record keeping as much as it is a tool to publish protocols. All of the content that's published on protocols.io is fully open access. And by that, I mean that a reader doesn't even need to register at all or sign up in any way to access and view the content. The repository now contains around 6,000 public protocols. This includes an incredibly diverse set of content from many different research disciplines. And if you're not familiar with protocols.io, a perfect starting place would be to take a look at protocols.io/welcome, search on your favorite research area, gene, protein, or approach, and take a look at some of the protocols that we have in there. Here is a very brief and snappy view of our mission. Our ultimate mission at protocols.io is incredibly simple. We aim to make it easier for researchers, or easy for researchers, to share all of their details of their methods before, during, and after publication. This is a crucial element of reproducible research and also of open research in general. And we are not just working in a vacuum. I said I would talk about some of the relationships that we have. We have a variety of partnerships or relationships with a large number of publishers, journals, funders, and institutions. So in fact, over 500 journals recommend that authors place their methods into protocols.io within their submission instructions to authors. A lot of these include a suggested approach for how to do this, and at some journals you'll even receive a reminder and a suggestion again to do this if you're lucky enough after peer review to receive a positive letter that's encouraging you to revise and resubmit. Anytime before you publish your article, you can still add your method to protocols.io and publish it, place it into the research article and publish it. Beyond journals, there are also quite a lot of funders who recommend to their grant recipients that they use protocols.io as a tool for developing and publishing the methods that are produced with that grant funding. A handful of funders also go a step further, and they require method sharing via protocols.io, and they can capture all methods developed by their grant holders and keep them in a specific group just for that funder, so they can very easily see what has been produced with the money that they have funded people. We also have an ever-increasing number of institutions that have signed up for campus-wide licenses with us. Researchers at those locations are encouraged to develop and share methods using protocols.io. This is a great way to archive methods as they're produced by a university or institution as well. Make a bit of a quick side note here that protocols.io is free for anyone to use to publish as many protocols as they like, but a user may only have a maximum of 5 private protocols unless they have a personal premium or institutional enterprise account. I am not going to go into the details of those account plans here, but you can contact us if you'd like more information about those. So onto the crux really of the webinar. Why publish your protocols, and what's the reason and the benefit of that? Aside from your obvious desire to try and make sure that your methods are as reproducible as possible, there's a lot of other benefits to making your research methods available this way. And I'm going to illustrate with an example here. So in the top tweet here, we have a scientist from Chile who put out a request on Twitter for a protocol to extract RNA from neuron cultures. After a few tweets were exchanged, there was a postdoc at UCSF who replied that he should use a method that was available on protocols.io. On further investigation, the protocol being suggested came from a published GigaScience research article, and this was a research article that had absolutely nothing to do with neurons and was in fact applied to a stickleback fish parasite. It's highly unlikely that a connection would have been made between this research article and this request for a protocol on neuron cultures, if not for the protocol in protocols.io. By sharing the protocol in a central repository, the authors improved the visibility and reproducibility of their paper and enabled the discovery and the reuse of their knowledge by people from other fields. So why publish your protocol? There are a lot of different reasons, but doing so can actually just lead to amazing connections being made in science across very different fields. ultimately this can lead to a lot of positive outcomes, as I'm listing here. And I will revisit them later. And altogether, overall, this can accelerate science, increase reliability and reproducibility, and enhance the overall value of research. And finally, I should just note too here that a step-by-step procedure, as you can place in protocols.io, is a much better representation for a protocol or anything that follows a recipe formula approach than narrative paragraphs of text that are the standard approach within research articles. But I will now quickly step back just a little bit and be explicit and make sure that we're all on the same page about what I mean when I'm talking about publishing your protocol. In the context of publishing a protocol on protocols.io, this does not mean peer review. I'm very simply talking about making a protocol public on the protocols.io side. There are a lot of ways that you can share your protocol within protocols.io, though some of those are very public and some are less so. So I was going to quickly run through the different ways that you can do this. The first and least public of these three ways is to click share. So that's highlighted. I've highlighted the three buttons that are on the protocols at the top. So you can click share, which will allow you to selectively share a link to your protocol with people you choose, either via their protocols.io user account or by entering their email. They don't actually need to have an account with protocols.io to be able to view your protocol. To everyone else in the world, that protocol remains invisible. This basically works exactly like sharing a Google Doc, means you can get feedback from collaborators on your protocol before you formally publish it. The second option, if you are ready to make it a little bit more permanent, is you can click Get DOI. For anyone who doesn't know what a DOI is, that's a digital object identifier, which is essentially the link that you get for anything that you publish. So research articles, data sets, and here protocols, you will receive a DOI, and that's a permanent identifier for the published entity. So if you click Get DOI, it will stop you from being able to further edit that version of that protocol. You'll need to be sure you have the full final author list, and when you click through, your protocol receive this DOI, and you will have a link that you can use. But with this way, the link won't be public anywhere else. The protocol will not be published on the protocols.io website, and it won't be searchable or findable any other way. This is a great way to get a DOI and link for your protocol that you can include in a research manuscript for peer review without making it fully public until your paper is published. The final option here is just to click publish, and this does pretty much what it says. This will guide you through steps to confirm the co-authors again, the status of the protocol, whether it's under development still or working for you. It will check it's a research protocol, and you will have the option to add to specific group or groups if you want to, and it will then be assigned a DOI and published on our site. This means it will be searchable and findable there potentially by anyone as a fully open access protocol. And once published, here is an example of the DOI that can be used as your protocol citation. If you click to see the metadata for any published protocol, you'll see the text I've cropped out here. At the top there is the protocol citation, but note that you don't just see that. Hopefully you can also see that if there is a corresponding published research article, you will also see the full manuscript citation, along with a reminder that if it is there, the publication citation should be cited along with the protocol. We know that scientists want, or authors want, the main article to be cited. So published protocols are fully citable both independently and alongside a published research article, but the protocol citation there at the top is what you can include within the research manuscripts, materials and methods section if you would like that to be what is considered as the method approach in a manuscript. What happens to the content that's published? It's all also archived in CLOCKS, which is a digital archive. It stands for controlled lots of copies, keep stuff safe. I always love that acronym. There is a lot of other functionality as well offered by protocols.io. So public groups can be used to organize content, and online discussions can happen between group members about those protocols that are in the group. There is capability to fork, which basically means to make your own copy of a published protocol. You can then adapt this with your own tweaks and optimizations for your own purposes. Users can add comments to protocols either on individual steps or relating to the whole protocol. The owner of the protocol would receive an alert and can respond, and there can be a whole back and forth discussion about anything of interest in that protocol. You can create new versions, if you are the owner, create new versions of a published protocol. And this means you can correct a mistake or provide a clarification if some detail was missing. And all changes from one version to the next can be tracked. And this is a lot cleaner to correct a protocol in protocols.io with a new version than it would be to go back to a journal and have to publish a formal correction. This kind of versioning functionality means that protocols published on protocols.io have a kind of dynamic permanence for record keeping and for methods. In the previous slide, you saw how that citation looked within the protocol, and here I will walk you through what this looks like in a published research article. If you scroll through this PLOS Biology article to the materials and methods, what is written there is that methods and protocols for all of the various experiments are available as a collection in protocols.io, and then they include the DOI link. When you click the DOI link, you get taken to the protocol collection in protocols.io. And in this particular case, we can immediately see that there is a newer version of the collection, and we can either view the new or the original version of the collection. And this simply means that these authors have done exactly what I just said was possible and made some modifications since the time of publication and created a new version. They may have fixed an error or added some additional changes. If we wanted to, we could track exactly what changes they had made. And if we click through to see the final version, the most recent version, this really illustrates the benefit of what I was calling before dynamic permanence of that DOI link. I see somebody just asked whether a new version gets new DOI. It has the same DOI, but if you can see on that version that we have on the screen right now, as V2, it's very clear that this is a newer version, and they're date stamped, so we would know how they related to the time of the actual article publication as well. So with this, authors can avoid the need to publish corrections with the journal if there are very minor clarifications that need to be made to a method after publication. And just to show you again and reiterate that there's that bi-directional linkage, you basically can just hop back and forth between the two, and it's a really lovely way of having articles to protocols and protocols back to articles again. And I will sum up here with this slide to reiterate the benefits of linking to protocols.io from your research article. First, you can make the life of any new lab member easier by providing a very clear and reproducible account of your approach. I think there's a quote from someone, I forget who, but who noted that your most likely collaborator in 6 months' time is you. And so the best way to ensure good record keeping within your lab is to have people keep precise, detailed notes as you can with protocols.io. In addition to reproducibility, having the protocol in protocols.io increases discoverability. As we saw earlier, you can facilitate what may seem like obscure research connections between very different fields, from neurons to stickleback fish, but altogether this enhances the value of the research. You'll get the benefit of the dynamic permanence offered by our versioning, and finally, you'll have a much better materials and methods in your research article. All of the other functionality offered by protocols.io means you can also be a part of the vibrant and fast-growing open research community. I will stop there. Thank you all for listening, and we have time for some questions. And please feel free to email with any follow-up questions afterwards.
Right, and it looks like there are some questions coming in already. The first question is it possible to publish a protocol and not get a DOI?
Right now, it is not possible to do that, but we have been talking about adding that functionality. You can use the share functionality right now. It won't be fully publicly available, but anyone who has the link can then access the protocol, but it wouldn't be findable on our website right now.
Great. And then there's a very small correction about the DOIs. So every new version does get a new DOI. So we can archive that. And then there's a question from, that says, I saw several exemplars using laboratory methods / protocols. Most apply to exact sciences. Social science methods can be added into protocols.io as well. That's a question. I mean, conducting interviews, conducting case studies, conducting surveys, observational methods, etc.
Yes, they absolutely can. It was originally built, Lenny was a geneticist, so the original premise and purpose was for lab research, but we have been working a lot to expand the scope, and it's incredibly versatile. A lot of the components that are in protocols.io, and sort of by components, I mean things like, and just to use lab examples, things like temperature and time, are in there, but if things are missing, you can put in requests, and we are already working with groups of social scientists try and expand out the functionality we have for exactly this kind of scenario. But even without the specific components, actually it's very versatile. You could add a lot of these things in with the step-by-step, just using the text for very different methods in different disciplines, and there are already some things in there from social scientists. Absolutely.
Great. And then the next question we have is it possible to get a dump of the article protocol mappings by DOI?
I am not sure. Do you know, Anita?
So I don't know what exactly they mean by this, but maybe it's just if you can export it.
Right.
Kuni, if you want to add a little bit more detail in the chat, we can get back to it in a second.
We do. Well, we do have an API, so I imagine in theory anything like this is possible, but I can't answer the specific details. But yes, Kuni, if you have more specifics there, we can try and get back to you.
Great. And then there's another question. Is it and will it be free? And will it be peer reviewed, or how do you check the quality of the protocols?
Right. So it is free for any user to publish a protocol. You can have 5 private protocols if you would like. So, you know, that means you can be working on those behind the scenes. If you want more than 5 private or more group functionality and other things that are offered with premium accounts, then that's something that can be paid for. When you publish a protocol on protocols.io, it is not peer reviewed. We do, though, have a screening process where we scan all newly published protocols and make sure that they are not pseudoscience and that they vaguely make sense and that they're not completely inappropriate content. So we basically reserve the right to remove anything that's completely inappropriate. Otherwise, they are not peer reviewed. You can somehow check quality by, if other people have managed to repeat a protocol, they're encouraged to tick the works for me. So you can see how many people have managed to reproduce a protocol by looking at that number.
Right. And then there's one last question. It's, can you share private protocols too with the share feature?
Yes, absolutely. But also if you're working in groups, you can share with other users just in the system too.
Great. I think those are all the questions that I see for now. And I think we're actually coming up on the time as well.
Great. Well, thanks everybody for joining us today. We can hang on for a second if anyone has any more, but I don't see any other questions. Oh, I did see an answer to Kuni actually. Yes, you can get protocol article mapping via the well-documented API, and there's a link there in the chat window for that if you're interested. Okay.
Thank you, Emma.
Thanks, Anita.